Hi, everybody, and welcome to Wouldn't It Be Fun? I'm Amy Snell, and you can find me here on Zoom and YouTube Live every month. And my guest this month, I'm very pleased to welcome the progenitor of the Fiberworld Festival and also the dyer behind 100 Ravens, Kel Bachus. Welcome, Kel. Thanks for
Hello.
joining me today.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm excited.
Awesome.
I got really big. Oh no.
I know, I made you big for everybody so everybody could see you. And
I'm like,
thanks to
oh, I can see
everybody.
my vacuum cleaner in the background.
I'm
That's
sorry, I
awesome.
wish I could crop it for you. Thanks everybody for joining us this month. I first got to know Kel as the progenitor of Fiberworld, the online virtual fiber festival. Um, Kel, how did this idea for Fiberworld come about?
Well, we had all this time on our hands. um, yeah, like everyone else, a lot of the fiber community were small businesses. We rely on these shows all over the country, Stitches and the state and county festivals that happen. And we just didn't have those. And a lot of the vendors were really hurting. People were, looking at going out of business, and people had started doing some virtual stuff here and there. As we do, we make do. We did the best we can, and there was some cool stuff happening. But I realized, I have this game design background, and we're thinking about like, how can we make this better? How can we make this more like an in-person experience? A little bit more interactive, a little bit less passive. And so that's basically how Fiberworld was started. We thought, well, we'll do something kind of more in person online and design from that sort of the space of it. So, and we started the beginning of summer. I started kind of with a group of students from Champlain College, and by the end of the summer, we had pulled it together. A lot more people had come on board, and a lot of folks from the fiber community had really taken a chance with us, and we were really grateful. It was a lot of fun. Chaos, but a good year.
You mentioned that you wanted it to feel more like it was in person versus some of the other things that were happening online. And I feel like you really accomplished that. My memories of Fiber World last year um, I remember spending a lot of time in the different lounges or hanging out in people's different booths. There was a virtual yarn crawl where people went from booth to booth to booth, and there were all these things that kind of, they were kind of participant generated, some of them at the last minute, but it was really dynamic, and it really did feel like I was getting to run into people, even though it was just, okay, we happened to be at the same Zoom room at the same time, but I met people there. I really did. And I got to spend time talking to them and getting to know them outside of the sort of official programming.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm so glad to hear that. I'm like,
that was
yes,
masterful. I really think that was masterfully done.
Thank you. Yeah. Like I said, we were really lucky that everybody was really game, and we had some technical stumbling blocks, but overall things came off really well. We had the team, everybody pitching in at the end. It wasn't just my students and I at the end; it was everybody, and really great group of folks. And like I said, all of you really made it. We had a lot more attendees a lot more vendors, a lot more participants than we anticipated, and we were so lucky to get so many great people. And I'm really glad to hear it. I feel like I talked to everybody several times because, I was answering everyone's emails and running around and doing whatever. But, it's kind of from this like crazy back of the room, But yeah, I'm glad to hear it. And for us, it's only hopefully uphill, downhill anyway. It's a good direction, some good direction from here. So.
Well, I'm really excited about this year's show, and from the things that I've seen, I get a little glimpse into the backside end of it, as a teacher, as a presenter, but I know I don't know all of it, but the things I have seen, I'm really excited about, and I do see changes that are happening, kind of responding to what people wanted more of last year or what things would have made it a little easier. And I think you and your team have been really responsive to that.
Oh, so glad, so glad. Yeah, it was really, I mean, for us, it really is all about user experience, right? And in terms of, the festivals, I think, while we all do use them to, go and sell our stuff or whatever, that primarily they are social, and if you think back to the beginnings of these fiber festivals, originally these were when, communities since the dawn of civilization, once or twice a year, everybody who was in distant farms and fields and places would come together and say like, oh, here, I've got this fleece. Oh yeah, that's great. I've got, this pig. You want this pig? Yeah, I'm going to have this fleece. Okay. Oh, hey, I haven't seen that kind of weaving before. Teach me how to do it. So there was this exchange of materials and ideas and community coming together to celebrate, but also have a marketplace, and have some parties and learn some stuff, right? This is how different patterns or cabling or whatever got transmitted. I mean, it wasn't like people were watching TV or writing it down, for God's sake. So that's what really these festivals are for, and I love that feeling that tradition is carried through, that into a festival, even though we're vendors, it feels like family to us. We know everybody, and that's our customers. And sometimes we only see these people once a year, but it's like, oh my gosh, and everybody gives each other hugs. And and by the end of the day, we're exhausted from talking to so many people. Like we've touched base with our whole community in that area, and that's wonderful. And sometimes that's what we have in California, or, down in Atlanta, or wherever we happen to be, or Texas. So.
You mentioned that you pulled last year's show together, at first tapping into some help and expertise from some of your students, and
Yeah.
then a lot of other help and expertise from throughout the fiber community. But that was a really compressed time frame that you pulled that show together in. Oh my goodness, that's impressive. Um,
Well,
are,
it's
are
arranged.
are you willing to share some of the challenges, maybe some of the unexpected challenges you ran into putting on something so completely new?
Oh yeah. Um, I mean, it, Champlain College has a really good game program. We have a 4-year program. We have different majors. We have game design, game programming, game production, game art, um, and uh, and our students. We take them from the beginning. They're making games, and they're making games together in teams. They're making stuff, iterating on it, and whatever. So like we kind of get them used to failure as a good part of the process. Otherwise, I never would have ventured this, right? We have students who are already professional. They're already used to jumping in, looking at what the problems are, working on solving them, and doing that in a way that's not fearful or, and so it was a good group of people to bring in, smart, great, that kind of stuff. And yeah, and the challenge is really for us, we just didn't know what we were doing, like at all, right? Because we've all put together WordPress websites, right? We know what that looks like, but I had never worked with the back end. And the poor programmer that I brought in was a game programmer, and silly me, I'm like, I don't know, it's code, code's code, have fun, right? And she was great. She was like, was okay, and did her research and did all this stuff. And I had also my game designer was also very technical. Two of them worked together. But we sort of naively were like, well, we're going to use all these plugins. There's all these tools that people have developed to use with WordPress. So they did lots of research. Again, all this stuff really good at exactly this kind of thing. Doing research, finding solutions. We're like, okay, this is the environment we want. Can't do it that way. Fine, we'll do it this way. Very agile. Put it all together, and everything broke, right? And that's what we weren't expecting. We were used to parts going together and more or less working, or if they're not working, it's something we did in the putting together process. Instead, it was just simply like this entire solution working together didn't work. And we were like, okay. And very memorably, the first day of Fiberworld, everything crashed. It was like, you could hear it was a crash heard around the internet, sort of this, oh God, everyone got on the site. It was like our worst nightmare. What do you mean it went down? Because we had joked about it. Like, we tested it and we didn't think anything was wrong. And we hadn't tested all the plugins working together in just that way. And of course, this was before COVID. So Zoom hadn't been used extensively embedded in web pages yet. So they hadn't really bothered cleaning up their act about that. We were using accounts in unprecedented ways that, of course, now are commonplace, right?
Mhm.
And plugins weren't used to having to think about a quote unquote live environment, which is what we had. Not to mention all of that happening all together, integrated under load. Now, of course, post-COVID, in this world, everybody has, quickly adapted and capitalized on, this need for virtual communication. So, of course, everything's greatly improved, which is great. But yeah, at the time, that was one big thing. And then just the time. But like I said, my students are kind of used to it. They're used to pulling together, say, a vertical slice of a game in a semester. And for us, summer's a semester, you know. And we thought what we were doing was pretty simple. Um, you know, and I guess that's kind of like the blessing of the curse and a curse of working with me on any project. So I'm like, we'll figure it out. And of course, it's always sometimes more complicated than I think it is, but I'm so convinced we can do it. I somehow managed to bully everyone through it, and then we just make it happen. So nobody sleeps. It's fine. I don't know why they still follow me places. So I don't know what's happening. Oh, good. I'm glad, Barbara. That makes me really happy. Good. Excellent.
Awesome.
Yeah, last week I was talking to Cynthia Woodspinner, and she's teaching a course. I didn't know anything about Fiberworld, and so I went into it and I signed up for a course, but I'm just so excited about the whole program. I'm stunned. So on Sunday, there's a group that's been getting together from Charlottesville, Virginia since over a year ago, like March, when all this COVID started happening. And some of them are they have attended a lot of shows. They are so active in spinning and everything, knitting. And I said, do you all know about Fiberworld? And there were 15 people in front of me on the screen, and they all looked at me. I said, oh, I see all blank stares. And then one said, oh yeah, Cynthia mentioned it one time because she lives near her. And I said, well, and I told people about it. So of course they're on their computer looking it up. So I think I got more people, but why you can't, maybe it's because you're coming from a college, my husband was in academics for years, and I know that you're not your big banner wavers, and so I just didn't know anything about this, and I'm so glad I found it. But this is only your second year, right?
Yeah. So and we're going to be getting bigger and improving every year. Our hope eventually is to turn it global and be able to really connect the fiber community from everywhere. So that's kind of like long-term plan. So
well, I love that.
I understand that there are several coming from other countries that are joining in. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Word will get out.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. I have a friend, Kel, a friend of mine from Australia, a knitting friend from Australia. And it turns out she's very excited because my Friday evening brioche class is her Saturday morning, and it works out. She's awake during that time. So she's going to dial in from Australia to take that class. And I know she's looking forward to hoping, that eventually maybe by next year, you'll be able to have some of the presentations and things running other times through the night so she can watch from Australia.
Yeah, our plan is to start as soon as we can get more participation from other countries. Our plan is to start we're going to start by breaking the globe into 4 pieces, basically. Not really, but that's a lot more technology than I have, and not that much time either. But just breaking it into sort of 4 quadrants, and then having sort of 4 sections with overlap between sections, so that people can also hang out together. And encourage people to kind of have an international weekend and maybe do some different languages at different times, depending on what time people are there, or if you're going to take a particular class that's given in this language. So there'll be some opportunities that way, and figuring out like, okay, if it's given in this language, let's do some subtitles, some translation. Eventually we want things like sign language and stuff like that. So yeah, we're just, we're trying to make it as great as we can. So
I have one suggestion, and that is, as you expand, don't be like some of the shows I've seen where I'm so confused the site, following everything on the site is so confusing. And since you guys are academic, I understand that. And so I know you can do it. I want to say keep it simple. I know it's not easy to do, but I hate the word user friendly, but make it so that when people come on there, they don't get lost and go, and give up, because there's so much in there. I'm able to follow it this year. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and that was a huge part of it too. I know Amy even talked about this a little bit, was that our goal from the beginning, and I love the word, actually, the word user friendly is okay. In games, it's called player centric. So that player centric design means that we have the player in mind, and everything's focused on the player experience and whatever great experience we want them to have. And so we are attendee centric with Fiberworld. And that means that we're thinking about representation. We're trying to get equal numbers of people from different groups, different perspectives, all in the same place. And it means that we want the site to be fun to play. In other words, when you get there, it's not just you're having the interactions with people and you're doing the fun things, but that when you're at the site, it's like being somewhere that you want to walk around and do things, so that every page that you engage with or activity that you do isn't just easy to do, it's pleasant to do. And that should be the whole experience. And honestly, you know, web pages, because we developed the internet, the World Wide Web, specifically as pages. It's an archaic interface that we think of pages as literally as book pages, as being flat, which they don't need to be. And we think of them top to bottom, left to right, which of course is very Eurocentric. Lots of languages aren't read that way. But that's how the whole internet is, right? That's the whole web works that way. So we're hoping to kind of challenge that and really look at space differently. This year, we've done some of that, and we're going to keep working with that. We're developing our own proprietary platform and that kind of stuff. So again, future stuff.
Well, it's going to be exciting to watch.
We're getting a little, okay, thanks, Barbara. I don't know if anyone else was hearing that feedback, but thank you for remuting when you were done. Thanks. And I see some other questions coming up in the chat, so I'll throw a couple in now, and we'll make sure to save some time for some more questions as we get toward the end. Someone was saying they were not sure where to find the vendor schedule, and I think that's something that people don't quite maybe come in with different expectations for how the vendor schedule works here, because it's different from most other shows. Do you want to kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, we love it. So the way the Fiberworld works, and it's going to continue to work into the futures, is that vendors, we mostly are working on Eastern Daylight Time right now, with some overlap for Pacific. We're mostly American time, but that will change. Vendors make, as Mom Susan said, hi Mom, as Susan said, the vendors keep their own hours. So they will be in the booth when they want to be in the booth. And if they're in their booth, there'll be little things that say that they're live and that they're there. And you can say, oh, they're in. We're hoping to have on the vendor list, actually little icons that say they're in their booth right now. And you'd be like, oh, my vendor's there. Go to their booth and jump straight into the Zoom window and talk to them at whatever hour they happen to be there. And if you go to the vendors' pages, as Susan said, most of the vendors have their hours posted on their site. They may just show up, right? They may be on Facebook and say like, midnight sale, let's go to the booth, right? And that's the cool thing about it. We don't have to all drive to the, to the site and wake up security. We can just go and pile in the booth. So that's the great thing about having our virtual show, is it's convenient to people's schedules. And again, when we're talking about accessibility, one of the things we talk about with shows is that a lot of small firms and a lot of small businesses can only do the shows very local to them. Either they can't leave their farm, they can't leave their business or their other jobs that support their families. They can't leave their families. They may not be able to afford to travel with their small business. They're just small enough that they don't quite have the overhead to, like we do. We have a trailer and we travel out to California, right? But that's an expense. Right, that's an expense, and certainly when 100 Ravens started, we couldn't have done that. And we had other income from other jobs, so we could stay afloat. But it's really hard. And if you look at an industry that's largely run by women or non-cis men, and we are trying to make it accessible to everyone, we can't do that on the one hand, and then say on the other hand, and you have to fly to California. That's not accessibility, right? And so what's great about Fiberworld is that it becomes an opportunity for someone who normally couldn't get to a show. Maybe they've got kids and they can only be in their booth when the kids are down, or somebody can watch their kids or whatever. Now they have access. And that was the really fun thing about it, was not only the globalization of it, but bringing new faces that you don't often see. And the same thing with the instructors. We kind of take for granted that instructors fly somewhere and teach, right? But that's only some instructors. And quite frankly, folks, these gigs don't pay much, right? So by the time they've flown out and come back, it's not like they're being paid to fly out there. You're kind of seeing the same instructors over and over again because other instructors can't afford it. They'd like to be able to, but if it's not local to them, they can't. So we are able to offer you pretty much everyone, right? If somebody wants to teach a class and we think the class would be great and there's a call for it, and sometimes we're like, try it. And then we see it. And if the classes have good response, great, teach another one. And we said one of the biggest comments that we got last year was how grateful people were to have exposure to instructors and presenters and vendors that they had never seen before. And for the vendors, for all of them, it's the same thing. They're reaching an audience that they don't normally see, right? Because we kind of also see the same people at a lot of the shows, right? It's either the people who are local or the people who can afford to and or have the time to go to all the big shows. So it's really good to see some different faces. So yeah.
I'll tell you, as an instructor at last year's show, I was super grateful that I submitted and you accepted, and I had been someone who was teaching locally, and I was teaching in my community, and I was teaching for some little local events and things. And I said, well, why not? But I didn't have experience at a big national festival prior to that, and that launched me. Fiberworld launched me, and I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding you, Kel. I am booked up through Thanksgiving right now, and I have in-person contracts all next spring.
That's fantastic, and that's what we wanted, right? Because I mean, it's Amy, it's people, it's people like Lauren from Mother of Pearl Yarns. She's got a great business, but she's just not getting the word out there. She's got a new baby. She's out in the middle of nowhere in this gorgeous little sort of fabulous boutique farm that she's got, but nobody knows about her, right? So, we get the word out about ourselves, get the word out about Lauren, about Amy. And, Amy, that was the other thing. We got so much feedback on your classes about how great it was. Everyone loved having you instruct. I mean, it's no wonder that you've exploded, but people wouldn't have known if they didn't have an opportunity to interact with you. So we so happy about that.
You've been a tremendous platform for new and up and coming businesses and instructors and dyers. I met the coolest brand spanking new dyers through Fiberworld because we were on a training call, and I met Lakeisha Hurst of Sassy Black Yarns, and I met Dwayne and Josh of Louisiana Yarn Guys, and somebody said, oh, instructors, if you want to team up with some yarn suppliers for your classes, and we connected on that call. And we've formed relationships, and we're doing collaborations, we're doing projects together, and they were brand new too. And this was their first show for both of those businesses.
Yeah, and we were so excited to. Now I know Sassy Black Yarns has done some other stuff too. They've been sort of up and coming as well. Louisiana Yarn Guys, freaking dark horse, came out of nowhere. They were amazing. We were so happy to have them. They're such great gentlemen. They were such a blast, and obviously people responded so well to them. I mean, who wouldn't? And their yarn is beautiful, and to hear that you had those collaborations is exactly what we wanted. And in fact, we had the first vendor tech test today, and one of the vendors said we should do something like TNNA where industry people all get together, and we thought, what a great idea. And we're talking about now doing some sort of like weekend where we just all come together. We have like kind of a mini retreat online. We do some fun stuff about sharing how to, business practices and stuff like that. And I feel like that's what it should be like. I feel like the fiber community is really unique. It's different. And I've been, kind of a couple dozen different businesses, I was in tech for years and games. And yarn and fiber is really unique in how the community is, because it is a community and all of it's kind of good and bad. And we see that kind of in Ravelry, this microcosm is sort of comes with the best and worst in people. But it is nonetheless a community first, right? It's a community first before an industry. And that comes with its own ups and downs, but it's absolutely unique. And what we have is really precious. And as a model, I think in a lot of ways it really works, that this sort of collaborative, cooperative model where it doesn't, we're not in competition with each other ever. Because people are going to buy all the yarn. I know that like there's a ton of 100 Ravens yarn sitting right there next to Fiber Arts, next to,
here by my desk.
I know, because personally, I bought a ton of my quote unquote competitors' yarn. And obviously, I'm tired of my yarn. This is Kat Weaver from Why Not Fibers. This is her yarn. And Becca's like, why do you keep buying Kat's yarn? I'm like, I'm tired of our yarn. Kat's yarn's awesome.
It's like you say, a rising tide lifts all boats, and
Yes,
I feel like that's what you've been in a big way. And I'd love to see something come in that's for folks in the industry. TNNA left a big hole, and
yeah,
sign me up if you do it, please. I'll
yeah, absolutely.
really.
I think we will. I'm not supposed to talk about it because we're not, but we might be planning an event for the winter that might be a more general kind of a. I'm not saying that's a craft fair or anything, but there might be something kind of in the works. We don't know. We're going to see how this does and how tired we are afterwards. Yeah, but we definitely have some stuff planned, and I think some industry time together to would be awesome. Yeah. So mom reminded me that the other thing about is people who can't travel to shows. A lot of people have mobility challenges with the shows. It's a lot of time on your feet. People go to Rhinebeck and it's awful. The ground's not even level, and we all love Rhinebeck, but it's like for anybody who's got mobility issues, it's a nightmare. And then a lot of the shows that it's close quarters, like if you're in a wheelchair or a walker or anything like that, or you just need some space when you move, you don't have it,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's
Beth is
exhausting.
nodding along there, and this is
Mhm.
clearly true for some of the folks
Yeah.
on this call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when it's virtual, you're going to attend, as we say, in your pajamas, and I know like a lot of people got burned out on Zoom over COVID, and absolutely rightly so. But I also think, as everyone's saying, I think it's also opened up a lot of doors, and we've realized, hey, we can reach out in these ways that are meaningful, and we kind of got the hang of it. And we kind of know what the codes are, and we say like, oh, we're only going to do this for a couple of hours because then everybody gets exhausted. Here's how to shake it up. Here's how to, you know, have it as online, but also not. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Jenny, thank you about that, about mobility. Yeah, it's a really big deal. And mom, thanks for reminding me about that. But yeah, because it is, right? I mean, I'm even as vendors, it's an issue, right? A lot of people who go to these shows, I hear over and over again, people who are aging out of the shows who say like, I think this is my last year. It's too tiring. I can't do it anymore. It's not worth the money because it's exhausting. And then I have to rest up for 2 weeks afterwards. And I think about the fact that like now I'm, in my 50s, but I'm relatively young and healthy, and it's a whole different game for me. And I think, do I really want to be schlepping this booth around in 20 years? And the answer to that is no, absolutely not. Like, nope. So yeah, Babs has a business where she's big enough that she, has hired a fabulous team, and they're doing the majority of that work for her now, which is great. But not everybody's in that position.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What are your personal favorite parts of the show?
Yes.
What are you most excited about?
I don't know. I don't attend it. No, last year I got to do the giveaways, the prize giveaways, and I really enjoy that. It's absolute chaos. Focus exactly. We had this really funny thing. So it was really janky. Like, I was like, so we'd have a giveaway hour, and everyone would pile onto the stage. We'd all get in the webinar, and I would do some, dog and pony show and, babble at people. And then, yeah. But then what was really cool is all the vendors gave us the coolest prizes. So I had this whole list of prizes. I would, of course, randomly pick out some prizes from our huge prize list. And then everybody would put their name into a form, and then I would have to cut and paste it into a randomizer, and then I would put the randomizer up on the screen so everyone could see it was above board. And then, like the first 3 people would get a prize or whatever. And so it was form reminding me to put the form up, and then focus because I would get distracted talking and then forget to actually regenerate the form, and then randomizer, and then we'd all yell randomizer. So that's where the squirrel come from. You'll see the squirrels last year was because of me being a little, shall we say, absent-minded. And I'd go off rambling, and people would be like, give us our prizes. And so we have the squirrel to represent last year, and we have a globe, the Fiberworld globe with a squirrel, and then it was Fiberworld 2021. Shoot, I can't remember what it is now. Darn it. Something Ride or Die. Oh, that's right. Ride or Die spelled DYE. That's right. Ride or Die for last year. So yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's, like people are talking again, Beth was talking again in the chat about, the energy, energy focus, things like that. Like it's it's hard. It's hard. And it's hard when you're away from home, you know, so that if you're not in good health or, you know, for people who deal with psychological issues or anxiety or those kinds of things, you know, and now you're not at your house. You can't just go to, you can't just, you know, go in your room and shut the door. Now you're in a strange place in a hotel, and now what are we going to eat for dinner? These are the things I'm concerned about. Where's my food coming from? Like, I don't have my fridge and my snacks, you know, so it's a big deal. Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad. I love what everyone's saying about access. It's just making me really, really happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's fantastic. I'm really glad to hear it. And yeah, and that's another thing. Some states don't even have shows, right? So if you're not traveling out of state, you miss out. Right. And certainly I know some of the hot states are like, yeah, we don't have fiber shows here. People don't have sheep. I mean, where's wool, you know? But that doesn't mean people should miss out. So
What are you most excited about at this year's show?
Teaching yoga again.
Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, will you tell us the yoga story, please? For those that weren't there.
Yes. So I was kind of a pudgy kid. And my mom was a yoga instructor. And it was like people would look at my mother and look at me and be like, how did this happen? You know, so my mother was this like lithe, beautiful sort of, you know, yoga instructor person. And here I was, you know, and she'd be like, you know, you just have to be graceful and flexible. And I'd be like, nah, you know. So I have this kind of like relationship with yoga about that. And so we'd said we were going to try and have some kind of morning stretch. And I'm like, I got this. So the first morning stretch that we had, because we didn't wind up having anybody to do a morning stretch, I'm like, I'm going to do this. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do morning stretch. No problem. So we put like a bunch of like bottles, you know, empty bottles and like, you know, thrown around yarn and everything. And the first thing you see is me on the floor just lying there with like an empty bottle and this yarn. And then I get up and then I'm kind of like stretching and falling around. And I basically, and I don't think we even had, I didn't even talk. There was like no sound. And I stumbled around and we did like, you know, this pose for this, oh, this pose for that. And then I stumbled out and fell down. And that was the end of it. And so that's now Yoga with Kel is basically, so there's always, I think a video came out recently that was quite excellent yoga that I did with involving a tree and a cat. So that's around on the internet somewhere. So I promise that there will be more Kel yoga because no.
Well, I might have to get up at 5 a.m. at least one of the days to join. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe noon code. No,
well, I'm on the West Coast, you know.
Oh, that's right. I was oh no.
Yeah.
I know, right? No, maybe we have midnight yoga with.
Yeah, well, that would work for me.
I just feel like this one. Oh, stretch it back.
Yeah. So I know that Fiberworld is not the only thing you do in this industry. You have been a dyer. You mentioned 100 ravens. So tell us a little bit about that.
As many people who have become dyers find out, what starts as a hobby turns into a business. I mean, you know, I like, Amy, how'd you get into it? I mean, you're right. like, I can't possibly make a living at it. And yet here we are. Here we are. Nope, still not making a living at it, but it's fun. Keep a day job. I was hanging out at the time. I was working at ZeniMax, which was the company that did Elder Scrolls Online for any of you who are gamers. And at the time, there were only two of us in the development team who were not men, and that was crazy. Tracy Seamster, my friend, she'd worked previously on EVE Online, and the two of us sort of huddled together for warmth. And she was a very serious knitter. She was on Ravelry. She was doing all this stuff, and I knew how to knit, and I was like, well, I'm sure I'll knit with you. And then that was just like downhill right there. And then I got into the Harry Potter House Cup, so God help me. And then I'm like, well, I'm gonna try dyeing some yarn. Don't ever do that. Just don't. Stop right there. Stop. It's like there's a huge archway there that you don't see. And over the top of the archway, it says, abandon hope, all ye who enter here, right? Like, just don't go through. No, I'll just dye a little yarn. So I just dyed a little yarn, and then I took it to work. And now by then we had, you know, a couple more couple more people who weren't men, like 2 more people who weren't men, also knitters. So we would huddle together and knit together at lunch and go vetch about our situation. Somebody said that they were in technology and science, and so I'm sure that, yeah, they know what I'm talking about. So yeah, so, oh, and we were all island girls too, because Tracy's from Hawaii, and Anna is from, I think, Virgin Islands, and then I grew up part of my life in Samoa, so, you know, we all have that island thing going on too. So anyway, brought yarn to work. My workmates, all 2 of them, were like, I want it, and so they took it. I was like, what just happened? And then this is the real bad one. They took it to knit night, and they were like, oh, and then people were taking their yarn, and they came back and they said, somebody took my yarn, make me some more. And I was like, crap, I don't even remember what I did. I'll have to write the recipe down. That's another mistake. So now I've written the recipe down, I can duplicate the color. So now I'm making the same color and everybody likes that color now, but now I need this other color. Oh, can you do this and this? And I'm like, I'm dyeing some stuff for myself. Oh, I like that one too. So, and that was it. And it was just like a little bit here and there. And then I put some online in what was at the time, my daughter's Etsy shop that I'd made her for a joke, because people are like, well, I want to pay you, but I don't have money, or I want to just send it to you. And I'm like, okay, fine. I'll just put it in the Etsy shop. Yeah, that's the other one. Yeah, and it really did. We started going, speaking of not having enough money to go to shows, I was really just kind of doing it on the side and not trying to make a living at it exactly. And then we started going to farmers markets. We were living in Wayland, Massachusetts at the time. There's actually a really nice farmers market there. And they were kind of like, yarn. Turns out Wayland Farmers Market actually has a fiber festival. Its own little teeny fiber festival. And Pam, the woman who runs it, was like, this is amazing. You should come to the fiber festival. And that actually did it. We had a couple of, I won't even call them customers. We weren't a big enough business to, I mean, listen, if somebody bought 1 skein of yarn at farmer's market, I was over the moon. I was like, yeah, we're buying bread. That's awesome. You know? But yeah, we went from having 1 or 2 fans. They weren't even customers. They were fans. They came every week and bought something from us. Iris, if you're out there, just great people. And it just kind of started rolling from there. And like I said, fiber is a really different industry. It's really word of mouth. It's very much based on community. Businesses do well because people talk about them, or do badly because people talk about them. So it's really a matter of reputation and making friends as much as having an audience or customers. It's very much about who your people are. And that's why I think people are so rabid about their favorite yarns and their favorite products, is because they have a sense of community about them. They feel part of that kind of, I don't know, group, that family, that tribe, you know, so yeah.
So are you still doing dyeing there, or has your day-to-day
Yeah.
changed with 100 Ravens?
No, my wife, Becca, I am terrible. I'm a serial entrepreneur. After 100 Ravens, I went on and I started a nonprofit for underrepresented developers, student developers in particular. And so I spent a year and a half, 2 years working on that. I just abandoned 100 Ravens when I started teaching. I'm a professor as well. And Rebecca was like, all right, I'll pick it up. And then she's like, wait, what just happened? You know, it's like so Becca's running the business full time. And then I also, after last year, dropped all administration of Fiberworld in her lap. So now she's running both 100 Ravens and Fiberworld, and she's just waiting for all the other, I think over the last year, I've started 4 new other ventures, small ventures, mostly game related-ish, game and community related, same stuff. So yeah, she's just waiting for the rest of them to follow. She said, no more. I have to stop for a minute, but yeah, it's kind of what I do. But yeah, so we got a lot going on. But yeah, I am still in and around 100 Ravens, but I do very little work other than sort of running downstairs and helping with stuff and, mostly staying out from underfoot. So yeah, it's definitely, they're using a lot of my old recipes, and Becca's doing everything 10 times better than I ever did, because that's how she rolls. So go her. Yeah.
That's awesome. Did becoming a dyer change the way you relate to knitting?
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, 100%. I became the biggest yarn snob. Like the biggest yarn snob. It's awful. Like when you become a dyer, you're like, oh, the ply, no, the ply. And it was like such a snob, But I also really appreciate, I think, both yarn and the construction of yarn and the fibers of yarn I'm much, I mean, way more educated about it than I used to be. But I also appreciate other dyers more. I think when you see like, Kat does a really beautiful job. Like I find dyeing natural fiber, not natural fiber, but not superwashed fibers very difficult. I don't have good luck with it. And when I find a dyer like Kat who's just really good at these, she sources natural fibers from around her place, and then dyes them. She does this amazing job. And to me, it's like magic. As a dyer, I'm like, how did she do this? Sorcery. So yeah, for sure. And I'm also, in some ways, I gave myself permission to not buy yarn that I didn't really like. My friends used to give me a hard time because I only bought like 3 colors. And as a dyer, I'm like, yeah, actually, those are my colors. They look good on me. They're what I like. It's fine for me to only buy those 3 colors. It's okay. So that's been kind of nice too. So like the colors that you like. And I tell customers this all the time. Colors that you like are the colors that you like. And chances are good, they look good on you and they match everything else in your wardrobe. So don't sweat it. People are like, I need to get out of a rut. I'm like, that's not a rut. That's your color. Like no.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I think it's so important to give ourselves permission to love what we love.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's really about. Okay, so I have to say it. I've been speaking of loving what we love. I'm like, colors, because color, right? That's a dyer. We're like, colors are never the same. It's like, oh, how would I mix this? I'm looking at this beautiful, like, first there's this gorgeous, like, sort of seafoam green thing going on, and this beautiful, like, looks like kind of natural yarn color, and then this absolutely gorgeous blue that I'm like, oh, who dyed it? I need to know. Tell me what this is. I need to know what this is.
I am absolutely obsessed with this. This is shawl design that I am releasing next week at Fiberworld.
Yes.
And yes, and it is. I'm sort of only showing a piece of it here because I'm not showing the whole thing until next Thursday in the Louisiana Yarn Guys booth, because this is their yarn that they dyed for me, and a design that I knit specifically to work with this yarn. And so we're going to unveil it next Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern in their booth at Fiberworld. And so there's a natural undyed skein, and then there's a skein of the colorway called Devious Mermaid.
Oh my God, that's the best color.
And they dyed it for me. These are my colors. This is like teal through blue to the greenish blue into purple. Those are my colors. That's my part of the color wheel that I just, I'm just drawn to. It makes me happy.
Well, that's it, right? That's it. It's like, it's the same thing with me. Like this is it. Like, my shirt and these colors, it's like this kind of dark ox blood and like, off white. This is like, and people are like, why do you have another brown sweater? I'm like, because that's what I wear.
I love this is me, right? I like the brights. I like the saturated colors. This is what I'm drawn to. And so this was the first time I was like, the yarn came, I was like, someone dyed yarn for me. Like this came out of, I had shared a picture on Instagram it was like a throwback picture from when I had mermaid hair. And so the hair I had was all these colors, and I had gone to my hairdresser and I'm like picking through his tubes of color. And I'm like, all right, I want these teals. I want these 2 different colors. And then I want this greenish blue that's different from the teal. And I want you to start here. And I want the blue and this other shade of blue, and like do it like it's all highlights. And then I want it all to fade to this super intense saturated purple at the bottom of my hair.
Oh my gosh.
And I wish I had better pictures than I have, but yeah. So anyway, so that was a couple years ago. I'll pull up some pictures for next week and share it, or maybe I'll go find some and I can screen share it later. But anyway, so they saw that picture and they said, oh, we want to do a colorway based on that. And so we worked together, and they're just so brilliant with the colors. And so they did this variegated colorway based on that. And it's called Devious Mermaids. So it was because I go by Devious Knitter, and then it was my mermaid hair.
I love that. I love that name so much. That is one of the best things about being a yarn dyer, is naming skeins. It's like the best thing. And the best thing is when you name something some really freaking obscure, like literary reference or movie reference, and some person comes into the yarn, then into the booth, and they're like, oh my God, this is my favorite book. And it's like the most obscure, like we name things after like dragons and like the Anne McCaffrey Dragon book were written back.
Oh, tell me.
Yeah, so we have like a colorway called Mentally, and people were like,
Oh,
is this
I know Mentally.
Mentally from Dragon Song? What? And they're like crying in the booth, and we're like, oh, they're crying. And yeah, we have Circle Sea Hold is one of our colorways. Yeah.
I am going to have to go pour through your yarn names again now that I know that, because the big stash of 100 Raven yarns that I have was from Stitches West 2020. This was the last thing I did before we went into lockdown. Was like, that's 10 minutes from my house, but we have an annual vacation that's that week. So I've never been able to go. But this year we were driving home just a little early, and I was like, drop me off. I went for 2 hours on Sunday afternoon, the end of the show, and I saw your booth. And I don't think I looked at a single yarn label, but I have a whole bag of all the stuff I bought because I love your colors. So I didn't read any of the names.
That's so awesome. Yeah, we always hear like, I wasn't gonna, like, we talk about the things most often heard in 100 Ravens booth. I wasn't going to buy any more yarn, but is one of them.
Yeah, totally.
People seem to fall down really hard in our booth. I don't know.
I love that. That's wonderful.
Yeah. I have to say I miss shows, but coming to the online shows is actually great. And I think it is. I think there's a technique to learning to pace yourself, like especially having taught all semester now, and I teach really intense classes. It's been really hard on my students, but now that I've taught, for a couple semesters, I'm like, okay, now I kind of got it, right? And I know there's even like a rhythm kind of from class to class. Like if I have one class a week or two classes a week, I know I can only lecture 1 in 3 times. Otherwise, my students are it's going to lose them. They're going to feel detached. They're going to get bored. They're going to be out playing games instead of listening to my fabulousness. And I think, that's part of it, is kind of trying to find that rhythm for everybody, so that, so it feels good. But I think it's possible. I totally think it's possible. We have to, everything's learned, right? I can't show you guys my shirt, but this is one of my favorite new shirts. And Gigi, who is our one of our hosts, this is her phrase. It's not hard, it's new. And I tell my students that, because like I think sometimes it's, especially in a world where we're kind of not instant gratification, I don't mean it pejoratively like that, but we're kind of used to like having things right away and sort of easy on board with everything. And I think that's one thing that's really cool about people who do fiber crafts, is they understand, like, you didn't just jump in and start lace knitting. I mean, and if you did, it was horrible, right? But you learn, right? It takes time. Like my mom who's here, Susan taught me how to crochet, and everyone had told me how easy crochet was, and I'm like, F you, this isn't easy, this is horrible, and then eventually I got it, but it's not hard, it's new, and I think that's really a thing, and I think that's a thing about online stuff, it's a thing about all kinds of stuff, and it's a good, like I said, I love this shirt. I have a bunch of stickers I'm going to give out to my students, because I think it's really true. We need to cut ourselves a little slack. It's like, it's okay. Pace yourself. It'll be all right, So, yeah, for sure.
So how long have you been a professor of video game design at Champlain University?
I think I'm at 3 years now. And yeah, 3 years. And I teach 4 classes a semester. So in professor years, that's about 45 years. No, I love it. I love teaching so much. But it's intense, right? I mean, it was intense before COVID, and it was really intense during COVID. I wasn't sure last semester, I wasn't sure I was going to make it. I was like, maybe we just bolt and run. Maybe I just tell my students, screw it, we're all leaving. But we made it. We made it through the semester. It was good. Production 2. Ugh.
And before you were a professor, you were a video game designer, right?
Yep.
Did you have an area of specialty in video game design?
Yes. Before I got into video game design, in fact, the reason I got into video game design is I'm a writer, and I had written genre fiction for a while. I do mostly fantasy and science fiction. And a friend of mine, Patrick Weeks, kind of like, we have generations of writers. We kind of all come up together, and it's like that Algonquin thing. It's sort of the same like group, not that good, but you know what I'm talking about. Well, I mean, some of them are, not me, but Patrick is a really good writer, and Patrick made the move into games pretty early out of all of us, and he worked on I think even the original Mass Effect game. which of course is really popular for having been narratively really strong. And he is now lead writer for one of the other games in their franchise. I forget what, sorry. But anyway, Patrick and I, like I said, we've known each other forever. We were getting published about the same time, science fiction and fantasy. And I went to him at one point and said, hey, is that something I could do? Because I make games, because I was, I've always designed D&D games and stuff like that, written little stuff on the computer. He's like, yeah, you'd be awesome at it. You should do that. I was like, all right. So I went off and applied for a game design job and got it. And I was like, what just happened here? And then that was, decade, 2 decades out of my life. So I'm still not sure what hit me.
So I'm curious, once you've designed a game, is it still fun to play? Or is that sort of, does that ruin them? Does that not work once can you not play a game you've designed really enjoyably?
I candot play games that I've designed. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Sometimes you have, candidly, you have a bad experience with a company and it leaves a little bit of a bad taste in your mouth. And there's so much, making games anyway is very emotional. If a company is dysfunctional, then it's even more emotion, and kind of revisiting the game is, games are very, what's the word? There's a lot of sensory input. And with all of that, it evokes everything that you were in. Because, when you're making games, you're not just writing code, you're actually in the game. Designers mostly get in the game, move stuff around, say, okay, this person's going to stand here and this is going to happen. And then these things are going to attack. And so you're always looking at the environment, kind of taking in the environment and imagining the environment and making up characters in the environment. And so when you get back into the environment, it evokes everything that's in your life at that time. So if it's a good time, great. If not, eh. And another game that I worked on quite a bit was a mobile game, Game of Thrones Ascent. And we worked in conjunction with George R.R. Martin and HBO, where we wrote a bunch of content for the mobile game and then caught up with the series. And then HBO said, great. So now what we're going to do is we're going to drop the script to you each week. You guys can write content, release the content when we drop the show or when we air the show, and we'll be in sync. And that was great. But that is a crazy development schedule. It works for mobile because mobile development's easier than regular, not easier. It's different. It's more compact and it's faster than regular game development. And we had down a rhythm. But it's very much like working in TV, only games. And at that point, we had written content all the way through all the Game of Thrones books up to where the show was, which I think at that point was, I don't know which book they were in. I can't remember, but I tell you, and I really enjoyed Game of Thrones. There was a lot of good content. George R. R. Martin was very, very generous with his property. And we would say like, hey, George, you know that part where you didn't put any Black people in it? Can we do that? And he's like, yeah, I'm really sorry. Go right ahead. We say like, hey, George, you know how like your women don't have much agency? Can we like do something? He's like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. No, trans people. Just put them in. Like he's really good about that. He's really generous. And, I found both his handling of Cersei and the series handling of her to be a little bit problematic. And I asked to take her on as kind of my character. And I kind of wrote her some not new backstory, but I filled out her backstory a little bit. I filled out some of her motivations, and that felt really good to me. But after you have lived, breathed, and slept Game of Thrones for weeks in and weeks out, and that kind of schedule, like literally someone's like, did you finish watching the series? And I'm like, oh no, I did not care. I did not care at all anymore. I'm like, you can all just jump straight off the cliff into the sea. Like, I do not care, and that's okay, because listen, there's a lot of games out there, and I love games. I'm always playing games. I always have a favorite game that I'm playing. And I played Minecraft for like a year and a half with my students, by the way. We spent most of COVID playing Minecraft together, which was great. It was a great way to bond. So there's so much good stuff out there that I don't really care, so yeah.
Hearing about that compressed time frame for your game development, no wonder you were able to bring off this festival in the time that you did. I can't imagine the stress of working under those sorts of time deadlines, but clearly it's something that you just roll with.
Yeah, and candidly, I think I also look for those situations. So people in my life know to be like, how about we do this in a year and not in 3 months? How about we don't? Because in some ways I love the pressure and I thrive under that pressure. I was for a little bit of time I did some firefighting. I've done some crazy stuff, and
Wow.
I do like it. But it's not, at the end of the day, we have to like have like enough to be healthy, but not too much. So I'm always kind of trying to get to that place of balance where, and also where I'm not forcing other people to do it. It's one thing for me to be like, yeah, I love an emergency, and everyone else is like, okay, but we don't. That's fair too, you know.
So what's next then for you?
Wow. Well, we have to get through Fiberworld, so there's that. And make sure that we have a really smooth launch and that everybody has a ton of fun. And then we're going to return back to the platform, I think, and continue development on that. I have another business that's community-based. I've got some folks working on building an intentional online community for certain types of entertainers and artists and writers. And they're going to use the platform for that. So it's going to be another use case for it besides Fiberworld. So we're kind of looking at all of that stuff. And then I have some really fun game projects, game-related projects, all with students. I love working with students better than anything. That's the other thing. Like, I don't really care what I'm doing as long as I'm working with cool people. And I'm constantly, like you know, I'm constantly meeting and surrounded by and inspired by all these cool people. Like Kat, hi Kat. You know, so yeah, and for me, that feeds me. That's I don't really care what I'm doing. Like, right, let's think up a cool thing and make it. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, that's fine. We'll walk away and do something else. So, but yeah, like I said, I've got about 4 things in the pipe right now, plus teaching. So it's enough. My students are like, don't take it. I'm not allowed to take on anything else until I finish the projects I'm working on. Does that sound familiar to anyone? I'm like, no, I'm gonna start a new project. They're like, no, work in progress. Finish this. Like, cast off or frog it.
Yeah. Well, see, there it is. You know, this intersection of your high tech game design and the fiber arts that you love.
Exactly, right. But I think there's a lot of people like that. You know, I met all these people in Ravelry, and it was like there was a huge intersection between, okay, librarians for a start, but these really smart people who worked on all these really interesting fields who were doing crafts. And it wasn't, you know, there's all these, you know, of course, you know, these stupid Colbert and his, you know, these stereotypes that are so invalid, you know, and invalidating. But you know that there's, I saw it. There was lots of people in tech, you know, women in tech in particular, and it's been awesome. You know, it's been really awesome. So yeah.
Awesome. So I did find that's not what I wanted to share. I found that photo though that you were asking me for.
Oh my God, how exciting!
Share it here. There it is.
Oh my God, that's incredible! You need to do that again. That looks like outstanding.
I kind of do, yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I wasn't brave enough to try it myself, but I think when I get back over to my hairdresser, I'll
oh my gosh,
pull up his dyes again.
You know, it's so funny because you describe it, and I was like, I could see it, and it was so funny because like you described it so carefully, like this here and this here, and you can tell, like again from a dyer standpoint, I'm like, yes, the highlights are in exactly the right places. Oh, I can see right where it goes to the purple. That's amazing. That little piece right here, it's just that's perfect. It's so perfect. That's amazing. Yeah.
That was
do that again.
That was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah. And so with that, I'd love to open up to some questions from our audience. And I know that Beth was waiting to ask a question. So Beth, do you want to unmute yourself? And
well, she got my big question about the vendors, which was the big question I have. Now, this is more of somewhat of a complaint question. Well, it is. It's a class that had a course requirement in terms of a kit that you had to buy, and you had to, you know, pay for it early. And now you've canceled the class on me.
Oh no.
So I've had to pay for the expenditure of the kit, which will cost me quite a bit to send back, even though it's a little bitty tiny kit.
Right.
When I've had the class canceled on me.
Right.
So it's a problem when you cancel a class that way, when we've already had to order early a kit, so it made sure that it got to us on time.
Right. So are you going to get a refund on the kit?
Pardon?
Are you going to get
I haven't contacted the person because it's like, well, is the cost of mailing back worth it to me?
Sure.
Yes. And so it's like,
Well, listen,
Ah.
let me tell you this. I am totally happy. Fiberworld will happily pay the return postage on that. If if that's a problem, no problem at all. Kat's here. Hi, Kat, and she can help you out with that. Kat at fiberworldshow.com, and she can help you sort that out and make sure you get your refund. Because I'm sure you're not the only person who's going to be in that position. So I want to make sure that all of our attendees are taken care of. And then the other thing that we can do for you too, is that rather than paying you the cash for it, we can also give you the difference. If you want to get a discount on another class or something like that, let us know. But whatever we need to do for you, we will do. Because I get it, right? Like where none of us are loaded, and we know that it's always a little bit of a risk sometimes, as it is with in-person shows as well. Classes do get canceled. We are hoping eventually to be in a position where we can still hold a class when there's only 5 people in it, but we also have to be fair to the instructors too. So, that stuff.
well, I found something to take, so that wasn't a problem. But
Oh, good. But yeah, you gotta get your class, your stuff back. So we'll sort that out for you. Like I said, Kat put her, Amy put Kat's information up there, so definitely follow up with her, and we'll get that sorted for you. No
thank
problem.
you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I figure there are a few other people that it may have happened to.
Mhm.
And it probably would be like a nice thing to put in someplace in the notes or something, so
Yep.
that other people know about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, Kat,
Sorry
like I
to-
said, no, it's good. Oh, there you go. Kat just said she made a note. Listen, we have
Great.
such a great staff this year. We didn't have these amazing folks last year like this, and it makes all the difference. Let me tell you, it's fantastic.
Awesome. Judith has a question. Go ahead and unmute, Judith.
Hi, Judith.
Hi, how are you? My question is, I'm a professional project manager. That's what I've done my entire career. So I know this is not an easy ask, but I registered for 4 classes. 2 of them were canceled.
Mm-hmm.
So then I picked 2 others, and then finally the big schedule came out of what was going on, and 2 of the classes I'd picked out were in direct conflict with on-stage events that I really, really, really wanted to see.
Mm-hmm.
So, and is there any way at all to put in? I don't know if that's even feasible to have some kind of a schedule ahead of time so we can juggle our classes around stuff.
Yeah, our hope is eventually to get that a lot more synergistic. We're still kind of working out the timing on all of that stuff. But yeah, the other thing that we're doing is, as much as possible where we have permission, we're recording, first of all of the presentations that aren't live are recorded. We will absolutely, where we can legally, make those available to you. And even if we're not able to do it publicly or for purchase or whatever, let us know if there's something you missed that you want to see later, and we'll at least make sure that you personally get that so you can experience it. So absolutely, yeah. We're happy to do that. Listen,
You can only do beer tasting in person.
Yeah. Yes. No, I mean that's
I can't
that's really it.
beer tasting.
Yeah. And one of the things that we were doing was trying to duplicate some content across stages and across time, so that if there was something that was really popular, and that's still the case. Like if there's something that people have missed that they're like, oh no, we want this, and we get a couple people saying that, we'll repeat it some other time so people can see it when we've got a free moment, or whatever. And like I said, if folks are also really interested in seeing something that they missed, just cause, in general, we're trying to get permission from all the folks who did presentation where we can. We'll make those things available for free for people who have a ticket for that year. If not, folks can purchase it, and then the money goes to the presenter. So, yeah, so that's a thing. Yeah,
well, thank you. I'm excited, and I'm very excited that you brought back the beer tasting, because I invite friends over, and then we all sit there and do the beer.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad. Yeah, I can't tell you. Like Robert, exactly. Robert, I can't even tell you, like, just made me so happy. And that's one of the things we really like too, is that we were able to kind of diversify the offerings, right? That we could say, like, have Marianne Munraj talking about She's coming out with another book, by the way. She was one of our hosts last year. She's going to be back again this year. She's got a new cookbook coming out, which is a companion book to Feast of Serendib. She's now doing vegan Serendib. So that's coming out soon. She's got some great offers. I think she might be doing some book signing. So she's going to be around again. But that's like not normally, like people don't normally have cooking, and we have cooking, we have beer, we have, whatever. Like, and that's what we tell our instructors too. Like, we want to know what other stuff you want to do. Come teach something else,
Yeah. I love it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Cool. Does anyone else have a question for Kel? You can put your hand up in the chat or put it in the chat or just unmute yourself.
Yeah, whatever you want.
I have something to thank you guys for. I had 15 classes I wanted to take at Friday, the second session. That was the best day to take classes.
Yeah.
I actually have a class that runs on Thursday, second session, and Friday at the second session. And I am taking a second class on Friday at the second session. And you checked very carefully with the first teacher, and you got permission for me to take the second session from her through a video. So I very much appreciate that. I thank you so much for that.
But that's all the team, Kat. Kudos. Like that's the best thing about being able to run something like this is that, like you said, the fiber industry is different. It's run very much as a community first, and it's not about customer service. It's about the fact that these people are friends, like you're a friend of us, and it's like that. It's sort of like, you don't mess with your cousin, you don't mess with your cousin's cousin. You're like, you all belong here. And so we want everybody to get the things that they want. It's not about the money so much, like the money keeps it all going, but fundamentally we want everybody to have a good time. That's why we did this. We're throwing a big party. We're having a bunch of classes, we hope you can take them all. If not, let's figure it out. So kudos to the team, Kat and Jill, and Julie, and of course Becca, have really kept that culture of people first and people and community first. And that's what I love about it. That's what I love about the whole industry. People who try and step outside that, you can tell people like, no, that's not how we do things. It's interesting to watch. It really is.
Well, thank you everyone for coming tonight. I think we're coming to the end of our formal interview part of the evening, and then in a minute I'll just open it up and everybody can unmute and we can knit and we can have conversation very informally, which is super fun. Just want to let everybody know that I do this monthly, and I am going to take a little bit of a break the first week of August. I'm not going to do the first Friday of August because I'm going to be on vacation. But I am going to have a guest later in August. I'm going to welcome Yasmin of Yasmin Designs. She is the wonderful crochet artist who made these earrings for me, and she makes them for everybody. She has an Etsy shop that's super, super popular right now, and she makes these gorgeous
beautiful. I've seen them.
Pieces. Yeah. So I'm really excited to have her next month. I don't have the date firmed up yet, but you can just follow me on Instagram at Devious Knitter, and I'll be posting that, or you can check my website. I always have upcoming events on my website, deviousknitter.com, or you can even follow the podcast. It has its own Instagram account, Wouldn't It Be Fun? So any of those places, you can find the details for next month's episode. And as always, if you like the podcast, if you're watching on YouTube Live, give us a thumbs up or hit subscribe. Awesome. Thanks, Kel, and thanks everybody. And I'm going to end our YouTube Live, but we're going to sit and knit and have a good time together.